What's going on, Golf Addicts? DB here, breaking down some head-to-head matchups for the Mexico Open 2022. Going to look at some names. I got a handful of matchups I want to talk through here, and kind of indicate some of the lines and where I think there's some interesting lines being set here, helping us make some decisions between some players in DraftKings. This is an important thing you need to do if you're playing DraftKings: is analyze head-to-head matchups, take a look at what the books think, and then watch the lines move throughout the week to maybe see where the money's coming in, and test whether or not the players you really are high on, the books and the bettors are also high on, and also the ones that you are kind of down on. Can this sometimes change your mind? I think it can, but I want to help us make some decisions today, especially at the top end of this range on DraftKings if you're playing DFS. And I don't really see a ton of lines I'm super excited about betting myself personally in terms of these head-to-head matchups. There's a few. I'll have to narrow that down in the next few hours to before I write my covers article. So let's take a look at it. And in fact, I want to kind of show. Let's see. I want to do a screen share here. I did this last time. Let's see how this can go here. I want to show a little bit of the model here on Fantasy National. So let's go here. All right. So you guys should be checking out the model here. I want to just kind of walk through what I'm doing. And this is preliminary model. This is the same model I used yesterday on Monday doing some research for the podcast. This could change. So I think for the most part, it's here. I don't really get too wrapped up in the values as much because I don't necessarily go, hard and fast rule on where you rank in my model. I'm playing you. If you're the number one in my model, then you're the number one in my heart all week. That's not how I really do it. So I do put in the values, but I don't put a ton of effort in making those values exactly where I think they should be. I want things to be proportionate, but that's just a little background here. So what you can see is really measuring the iron play from these guys is the number one thing I'm putting weight in, because you're taking a look at strokes gained approach at 20% and then opportunities gained at 20% as well. So 40% of my model is based on really how guys approach greens. Opportunities gained being the proprietary stat at Fantasy National, where it measures how many times a player has a birdie or better look at less. So I like that stat because you're going to have to make a ton of birdies at this event. This looks like it's set up to be fairly easy unless wind really. But massively wide fairways, not penal rough, not a lot of trouble out there off the tee. So I think guys are going to be bombs away, and then you've got big greens that I don't see people. If you're missing greens here, given you know the size of these things, it seems you're going to be in trouble. So you'll also notice there's 0 strokes gained around the green on here. I don't care to look at it, because if my guy's relying on that, I'm probably dead anyway. But the iron play is number one between opportunities gained and strokes gained approach at 40%. I did put distance pretty heavy. This is probably heavier than I normally would put driving distance at 20%, but I think it's going to be a big deal this week, and I'm definitely believing that. Actually, and here's proximity just for Pat. 175 to 200. As you can see, I put it very low. I just want to look at it. I just want to know, is my guy who's checking these boxes at opportunities gain and strokes gain approach, which are much better stats in terms of predicting iron play and performance, over proximity. I want to see that these things kind of line up. If I've got somebody that's really good at approach and opportunities gained, but they really, really suck over a long term. If you notice, I did the last 50 rounds here. You can see that right here. That's the last 50 rounds here. So I went a little longer term. Short term proximity is really dumb. That's even dumber than proximity in general, because your sample size is going to be so small. So there's a little weight there. You'll notice I did 20% on DraftKings point scoring, because that's going to be extremely important here. Given you got to make a lot of birdies, that doesn't really matter, I guess, in terms of a head-to-head matchup. But well, I guess it does because you still got to make birdies in head-to-heads. And then finally, putting. I looked at a long-term putting range, and I just gave it a very small percentage of 5%, and then a 10% weight on last 12 rounds. So last 12 rounds here, last 100 rounds here, and I did not specify to pass Palom. We just don't get enough looks on past Palom, and it seems to be kind of one of those surfaces that just doesn't really matter whether you're comfortable on it or not. It's not super difficult. These greens aren't really slopey. They're not going to be super fast either because they're coastal, so they probably keep them a little bit longer. I just want to see who's got a hot putter, and just in general long term. I just want to see it. So as we look at the model, I want to draw our attention to one of my first names. By the way, if you're in the chat, which nobody is, but if you are in that live, I guess at 9:53 in the morning, it's kind of tough for me to expect a lot of people to be in the chat. I usually do this later in the day, but I figured I'd give it more time to live on YouTube if I do it earlier. Um, if you're in the chat and you have a line you want me to look at, throw it out there. Marcus, what up? All right. The first name I want to talk about is Tony Finau, right? Since he's right here at the top, I found three matchups with Finau. Between Unibet, FanDuel, and BetMGM, all three legal sports books here in the States. So three matchup. And, I think obviously we talked about this on the show last night. If you're making a decision on Rom or, or everybody else, that if you say no to Rom, then you're logically going to start working down to Finau. Me and Pat talked about it, wondering about Finau's ownership being suppressed because of a lot of people going up to a very cheap Rom at 11-3 in this field. In terms of the betting market, I found him at minus 112, a coin flip on FanDuel to Gary Woodland at, you know, $500 less, which I found interesting. And then I actually found him a dog to Abraham Ancer at minus 105 to minus 118 on MGM. And I also found him a dog to Aaron Wise on Unibet. Finau's minus 110, Aaron Wise minus 120. I mean, Aaron Wise is, you know, $900 cheaper. Gary Woodland, $500 cheaper. Ancer, $100 cheaper. And he's a dog to two out of those three. Very interesting with Finau. So clearly the books setting these lines are not super interested in Tony Finau. But if we look a little deeper, I'll tell you why I think there's some reason for optimism. Um, let's see here. Am I sharing? No, I'm not. Hang on. Here we go. All right. Let's click on Tony Finau. Sorry. All right. Now we're looking at Tony Finau. Over the long term of Tony Finau's career, if you look last 20 or last 109, his entire PGA Tour career, he's always gained in these categories up until putting, where usually a struggle, but even that wasn't terrible. He's usually been a really good around the green player. But notice in the recent events, he's really dropped off there, and I think that's somewhat held him back. That's somewhat held him back from these events in 2022. I mean, here's the awesome end of the summer that he had, where he won the Northern Trust. He played well in the playoffs, etc. But look, starting here in 22, the chipping really left him. But I mean, if you look at an event like the Genesis or the Valero, where he finished 33rd, 29th, 3.3 strokes, 1.4 strokes is a lot of strokes around the green to lose. You make that neutral or even positive, which it has been in Finau's past, and it's a different ball game for him. He's got maybe some top 15s, a couple top 10s, and maybe people are thinking differently. But what I like to see and what does give me some optimism is the approach play has remained fairly consistent. The off the tee play has also remained fairly consistent. He's obviously a long hitter, which you're going to need here. 35th at the Masters. He didn't really blow anything out the box in terms of statistically at the Masters, but I think there's a reason for some optimism here. And even though the books aren't real high on him, I think it's interesting. So depending on what ownership projections look like, I still think Tony Finau's in play. In terms of these head-to-head matchups, I don't know that I would take him on any of these, except I might consider him on BetMGM minus 105 dog to Abraham Ancer at minus 118. We all know how much I think Abraham Ancer is definitely not worth his usual price tag or weight. So that's the Tony Finau look. I think that's going to be an interesting decision as you start to decide whether you're playing John Rahm or not. All right, getting to the next guy on the board is actually just a guy we just talked about, and it's Gary Woodland. You find Gary Woodland, who is let's see, Gary Woodland is at he's at 9,900 on DraftKings. I believe he's what is he like 20 to 1 to win on a lot of books, 25 to 1, something like that. But I found four matchups for Gary, and well, I mentioned the Finau matchup where he's a toss up to Tony Finau on FanDuel. Despite being a lot cheaper on DFS, despite being shorter odds, actually, even on DraftKings. No, yeah, he's a little bit shorter on DraftKings. 20 to 1 on DraftKings. Finau's 25 to 1. I don't know on that one, but he's a big favorite against Chris Kirk, minus 125 to Chris Kirk at plus 100 on BetMGM, which, if we're comparing DraftKings pricing, that would line up, as he's $300 more expensive than Chris Kirk. But yeah, big favorite to Chris Kirk. I don't know that I would take the Gary Woodland side of that line. I like the value on Chris Kirk there at plus money. Um, I thought this one was very interesting though. He is minus 130 against Sebastian Munoz at plus 105 on DraftKings. That just feels like that feels like a big, big difference, considering DraftKings priced Gary Woodland only $100 more than they priced Sebastian Munoz. But I'm trying to figure out what it is DraftKings, or the lines maker on this head to head does not like about Sebastian Munoz, because there's a lot to like about Sebastian Munoz right now. He is definitely checking some boxes. Going back to that model that I was looking at, let's see, I'll share this with everybody. Let's see. Yeah. So going to the model here, you can see Sebastian Munoz, eighth in the field in strokes gained approach, sixth in opportunities gained. Like I said, I like to see how that looks. I just want to see where he ranks in proximity for those longer ranges. He's number one in the field in that range over the last 50 rounds. 17th in DraftKings points scored and 59th in distance. But I mean, his distance is still just fine. If I share this here, we can look at his strokes gained recently. I mean, ball striking has been tremendous. It's just been all about the putter for him, which is the story of Sebastian Munoz's career, right? It's always been about the putter for him as well, just like Tony Finau. But let's look at distance real quick. You can do this on Fantasy National. Change this view. 172, or basically 173 average ball speed, which is very, very doable on the PGA Tour. You can see that he doesn't always gain distance. He's not always gaining distance, although it does appear that his last few events he definitely has been able to. Um, but look over his career over long term. Look at his entire PGA Tour career distance gained. He's gained almost 3 strokes over the long term. So he's not a short hitter by any means. I think Sebastian Munoz is one that you could definitely consider. And I mean, to be that big of a dog against Gary Woodland is a little strange to me. I think Munoz again at plus 105 on DraftKings would be one that I like some value on. But I'm telling you about these Gary Woodland lines to basically say, clearly the books enjoy Gary Woodland this week. They're bullish on Gary as a favorite, or at least a toss up on all four of those lines against Munoz, Finau, Kirk, and Tringale. It'll be interesting to see if those lines move at all. Gary's can kind of be inconsistent, and he's definitely burned betters and DraftKings players for years. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. All right, the next line I want to look at is one of my favorites. You guys know he's one of my favorites, and it's obviously Catalina Tringale, and that's what we call him in the Nut Hut, old Catalina. I'm liking Cameron Tringale. I'm very bullish on Cameron Tringale, both in the short term and long term, despite sometimes when he's burned me. But if we look at Tringale here, sixth in the field in strokes gained approach. Opportunities gained is showing me a little different. So I mean, he's hitting it okay into these. Obviously, he's hitting it well into these greens, but maybe not getting quite into that 15-foot or less birdie range. But probably still, giving himself plenty of looks, just not dropping many putts, which is obviously indicated here in his last 12 rounds. Putting, he's 75th in the field, but long term, a pretty good putter. Um, I don't love the proximity ranking here, but he's got some pop in the bat. And I do believe that the thing I like about Tringale is, if we dig in a little deeper on Tringale, the guy clearly he's got top five upside, and I truly believe he has winning upside as well. Um, historically always been a good approach player, and he's lost strokes off the tee. But I want to look and see why that is. Is it distance? Is it accuracy? Is it both? So let's actually click in here to this distance accuracy deal here, and 172-mile-an-hour ball speed. Again, that's very fine. That's very fine for the PGA Tour. Very fine, very fine. But look at distance gained. Like he's plenty of distance gained here. He pops and then he doesn't pop. It just kind of depends on what's going on. And also, it kind of depends on, they only measure a few holes a tournament out here but 172-mile-an-hour ball speed is just fine. In other words, I think Tringale is long enough. There are guys in here that I don't think are long enough. There are guys in here that, that are obviously very long enough. Tony Finau, John Rahm, Gary Woodland among those, Aaron Wise, Cam Champ. And then there are guys who, are long enough. And I think Tringale is one of those guys. But here's some matchups I want you to look at with Tringale. ah, excuse me. By the way, if you're watching this, give me a thumbs up on the video. Maybe a subscribe would be nice. Drop in a comment. Um, I really need comments. Comment on whether or not you like these videos. I've been doing these every week since I went full time. They don't get a ton of looks or engagement, but I know that they're beneficial. It's something that we all should be doing, whether you're just playing DraftKings or you are betting as well. You should be doing this. You should be looking at these lines on Monday, on Tuesday, or on Tuesday when they come out, on Wednesday before you finalize your picks. That's something that you should be looking at and paying attention to. But maybe if there's something else you want to see here that I'm not showing you on a weekly basis, let me know what that could be. All right. So let's go back and look here at some names. So on MGM, Bet MGM, Tringale is a toss-up, a dead heat against Kevin Na, despite Na being $400 more expensive. I am not very bullish on Kevin Na this week. The biggest reason is this right here, the pop in the bat. Right now, he is pretty decent. Considering he's not a very long player, he's pretty decent in the proximity range, all things considered there. And then Kevin Knott 10-1 just scares me from this is Mexico. God knows he could have some water and all of a sudden, he's hitting a porta potty on the driving range and now he doesn't want to play anymore. So 10-1 Kevin Na is never something I feel super comfortable with. Kevin Na in the 8s or the 7s, I can definitely get down with. Not in the 10s. I'm just not going to do it. But Tringale, a toss up there on Kevin Na on BetMGM. And then he's a favorite against Kevin Na on DraftKings. He's minus 120. Na is plus 110. I'm sorry, plus 100 on DraftKings. So, odds makers clearly feeling Tringale over Kevin Na. And then he's a dog. Tringale's a dog plus 110 against Abraham Ancer at minus 142. Now, let me ask you this. Let's just say my model is the smartest model on God's green earth. And, you know, Ancer's 93rd in my model. And I said I don't really look at this rank, but just it gives you an idea. Tringale's 23rd. I mean, look at what is Ancer doing that everybody's so jazzed up about? Oh, it's his long-term putting. Okay, great. Last 100 rounds, he's here. Here's his last 12, which, putting highly variable, whatever. He's not scoring DraftKings points. He doesn't hit the ball far. He's not giving himself opportunities. He's not gaining strokes with his irons. He's pretty decent with, longer proximity, but that's it. Like, what else is he doing? Let's look here at Abe. What's he doing here? What's old Abe doing? Um, I mean, it's okay. It's not wonderful. He definitely has, definitely fallen off a little bit in 2022. I get it. He had a great run last year. I mean, look at this. Like, look at these finishes here. But look at the ball striking. Look at the iron play. These big pops where he can really get hot. He's really not done that at all here. None in 2022 with the irons. He had one good week at the Phoenix with his driver or off the tee, and that's it. And even the putting has kind of dropped off. Like, look at the putting. Here's starting in January up. There's the putting. Actually, I would say if you add all that up, yeah, he's negative. But then look at when he was hot here. Look at these putting numbers. I mean, the way Fantasy National color codes this thing, you can easily see it without even noticing the numbers. You just see the green and the red. And the red here for Abe is what I don't like. I also don't like that, this is, he's the chosen son of this golf tournament. And I get it. Like, it's the Mexico Open. I get it. They should be pulling for Abraham Ancer. He's a great ambassador for, golf in Mexico. I think he's a good player, but I definitely think he's overrated Abe. And I think he's overpriced on DraftKings. I think this line is silly. I would gladly take the Tringale plus 110 number against Abe Ancer at minus 142. And then I also found a line on Tringale, a toss up against Gary Woodland, minus 114 on Unibet. So, Tringale toss up against Na in one book, favorite against Na in another, toss up against Woodland at Unibet, and then a dog to Abraham Ancer. Like, no. it just makes me feel better about Tringale, honestly. I'll take the plus money against Abe, and I still like him in DraftKings. We'll see what the ownership comes around to, but that's what I like. Some other interesting lines I also found. BetMGM also likes Abraham Ancer, minus 118 over Tony Finau at minus 105. If you like Finau this week and you can bet on BetMGM, I would take that. Basically, you give me a big favorite Abraham Ancer on any book, and I will take the other side almost regardless of who the player is. So those are some interesting lines for me. Any others in the chat that you want me to look at, put them in now, and I will gladly pull those up. Chad asked about Pat Perez. Um, I like what? Okay. Oh, you want to know if there are any lines about Pat Perez? Let's take a look. Perez. I didn't even know he was playing in this damn thing. Okay, yeah. All right. Here's a line on FanDuel with Pat Perez. He opened as a minus 126 favorite over Kiradek Barnrat at minus 102. That makes sense. I don't think that really gives us much of anything. And that is the only. Let's see. Oh no, Bet Online has an opening number on Perez at minus, actually just a toss up against him and Adam Svensson at minus 110. I would probably take Svensson there. Um, yeah, I would probably take Svensson there. I don't think. Let me look at Pat Perez real quick. Perez. Yeah, I mean the thing about Perez is a no bueno. Driving distance, he's 119th in the field. Opportunities gained, 127th. That's not good for an event like this. 59th at strokes gained approach. He's only really the only box he's hitting is putting, and that's been better over the long term than it has over the short term. At 7,500, that's a steep price for Pat Perez for me. I don't see anything that would indicate Perez doing something worth rostering. Anybody else have any questions in the live chat? Throw it down. Um, you can always look at some tee times and waves, find players you like in both ways. Yeah, I mean that's definitely an option. If you as soon as the tee times come out, you can take a look at the weather, and if you want to go ahead and trust the weather's going to do what they say it's going to do on Tuesday, as soon as those head-to-head lines pop out, then you could go ahead and hit it. If you find one that's favorable, has a favorable draw over another, you could hit that. But sometimes that can bite you because the weather can change, things can turn. But if you're betting on a Wednesday and you see a line that looks lopsided based on a weather draw, I would definitely say, maybe hit that. But just know the books are paying attention to that as well. It's not like they're not the lines aren't moving based on weather. I'm trying to think any other lines that were interesting. I did look at Chris Kirk a few times. He showed up on a few lines. I mentioned his line on Woodland where he's a plus 100 dog. I would take that. He's minus on DraftKings. He's minus 120 over Aaron Wise plus 100, and on FanDuel he's minus 126 over CT Pan at minus 102. As it pertains to DFS, he should be a lopsided favorite against CT Pan based on the pricing on DraftKings and DFS, which makes sense. But the Aaron Wise number I found interesting that Kirk would be minus 120 and Wise would be plus 100 on DraftKings. I thought that was interesting. My boy Davsky, he's kind of a guy that I'm bullish on. He's minus 118 over Patrick freaking Rogers, minus 108. A guy that, and that's on FanDuel, a guy that is so annoying. It's just absolutely so annoying that I can't even think about it. Yeah. I also found this line. Carlos Ortiz is minus 126 over Austin Smotherman at minus 102 on FanDuel. We talked about Smotherman on the podcast a good bit. I'm already seeing him tweeted about on Twitter and stuff. You know, he is checking boxes. He's a rookie on the tour, and he is checking boxes. His ball striking's been very solid. I don't know that Ortiz should be that big of a favorite. I'm wondering if these books are giving these Mexico guys like a big push, which again, just because this is a home game doesn't mean that's necessarily a good thing. There's a lot of pressure on guys like Ortiz and Ancer. They're the biggest names in representing Mexico on the PGA Tour week to week. There's going to be pressure, and there's going to be media responsibilities. There's going to be things that they're going to need to do and have to do, and distractions and all that kind of stuff. And look, just because it's in Mexico, like Mexico's a big country. That's like saying this is a home game for Will Zalatoris because we're playing in Minnesota, because Minnesota's in the U.S. and Will Zalatoris is from the U.S. Like it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means there's a lot of pressure because there aren't too many Mexican golfers week to week on the PGA Tour that are contending like Ortiz and Abraham Ancer are. I don't know why the books would give so much juice to that. Maybe that's not why they're doing it. They just really believe Ortiz and Ancer are that good. But as it looks right now, any line I can find on Ancer Ortiz, I'll take the other side because I just don't. I don't know. I don't feel it. Jason says I'm playing Cam Champ down across the line, even day one leader. What are your thoughts? Yeah, Cam Champ is definitely one that I am intrigued by. We talked about him on the podcast last night. In terms of matchups, let's take a look at the matchups first. He's a toss up against Carlos Ortiz on Bet Online. He's not got a line. Well, he's got a line on FanDuel, minus 118 favorite over Brendan Todd, minus 108. Honestly, that's that seems concerning. Like, I guess for Cameron Champ is a much better course fit here than Brendan Todd, like by a long shot. If I were setting that line, it would be longer. I would have Champ at like minus 125 or even minus 130 here against Brendan Todd, especially coming off a top 10 at the Masters his last time out. I definitely think that line is too short for Champ. Oh, here's an interesting line. And actually, this looks like it just posted. Cam Champ minus 114 against Sahith Theegala minus 114. That is very interesting. I mean, we talked about both those players last night on the show. We like both of them. Sahith is a popular player in the DFS circle, especially. He's 8,800 on DraftKings. You got Cam Champ at 9,400. Definitely some savings there. Champ, the distance and the long iron ability is very attractive for Cam Champ, that's for sure. And we talked about his form leading up to his win last year when he won the 3M Open. It looked very similar to what his form looks like now. A lot of miscuts, bad finishes, and the last event was a top. I think he finished T11 last year, and then he won. This year he's T10. And now what are we going to get? Everything that we're hearing is continuing to confirm that this golf course is going to play in favor of the Bombers. Everything. We'll have a lot of more details on that. A lot of more. What the hell was that? We'll have a lot more details on that as we continue to get more information from our caddies and our PGA Tour coaches that are on site right now. That'll all be in the Nut Hut this week. Mondo, thanks for watching. He says he's been watching Smotherman the last several weeks. No doubt a lot of potential and very long, but he can't seem to avoid the double bogey here and there. Still may need some seasoning. Mondo, I like that. Yeah, I mean, if you've been tracking him and watching his shot link, you can pick up on things like that, which is important. We say this all the time. One of the things that you can do to make you a better or DraftKings player or DFS player is to watch golf. And that doesn't mean just on TV, because Lord knows they won't show you everybody that you should be watching, but it means tracking guys on ShotLink and looking at their rounds, seeing how they got there. That's a great point that Mondo makes. He is a long hitter, and his story on the Korn Ferry Tour was great ball striker, hits it long, tons of greens and reg, short game suffers, putting suffers. But when it pops a little bit, it pops, which we see with a ton of players on the PGA Tour. The only thing I'll say against this double bogey thing is I don't know that there are many double bogeys out on this golf course unless you are way off the map and you find water here, or the handful of holes where there is water in play just off the fairway. That's really the only time I see double bogey here. The greens are relatively flat and large. We have heard so far that there are not a lot of severe, collection areas, runoffs off the green that are going to make it difficult to chip back up. I mean, unless wind really gets fired up, I don't see a lot of double bogeys out here. So, that may play into Smotherman's favor, even if he's having a hard time avoiding those double bogeys on a course like the Heritage or Harbor Town or Copperhead or whatever it is. So something to think about there. Hey, listen, I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for the video. Thumbs up, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you like about these videos, what you don't like. Is there more you'd like to see behind the scenes at Fantasy National every week? I can drop that in for you. And don't forget to go to Fantasy National/TJ to get 20% off any membership level that you choose. Weekly, monthly or annual memberships available, and you can upgrade it any time and retain the 20% off discount by going to fantasynational.com/TJ. That's it for me. I'll be back with some more content this week. Let's have a week. Bend over your bookie, and may your screens be green. See ya. Jeez.